All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Let's stand and salute the flag if you would. Commissioner Collins, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. Roll call, please.
Commissioners George Salgin,
Yes, here.
Deborah Vanison, David Collins,
Here.
Steve Stevenson,
Here.
Jeff Vayu,
Here.
Stephen Verber.
Very good. Well, at this time, we open up the floor to those that might have something they'd like to discuss that is not on our agenda for this evening. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission? Seeing none, we'll go to approval of last month's minutes, which didn't take long to review.
Second.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, they are adopted. And then at this point, we will open up a discussion item as opposed to a full review. Public comment period will be allowed here, though. We will have the director, he'll introduce the subject, and then we'll have the applicant. They'd like to address us, and then we'll open it up for more discussion after that, since it's not a typical public hearing, but we do want to have some discussion. So, Director Zeidevart, please introduce the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners. Basically, go ahead, Hunter, if you want to put the site plan up. The request tonight is for a site plan permit to construct 6 tennis courts along with a parking lot on the Ripon Christian High School campus, located at 552, 564, and 570 North Wilma Avenue. The proposed project is located in the PS Public Semi-Public District, and it's on approximately 2.5 acres. The project will include installation of 2 new commercial driveways on Wilma Avenue, a 69 stall parking lot, 6 new tennis courts along with associated fencing, a shaded courtyard area with tables, an accessible pedestrian path connecting the new parking lot to the existing high school parking lot, tennis court lighting and parking lot lighting, and associated landscaping. 2 existing residential homes that are on the project site will be demolished for this project. The tennis courts, it will consist of 6 new tennis courts. 4 of the courts will be located to the north of the resident at 522 North Wilma Avenue by approximately 32 feet off their northern property line, which is their side property line. And 2 of the courts will be located directly behind the resident, approximately 5 feet from their rear property line. All the courts will be fenced with 12-foot black vinyl coated chain link fencing. The applicant has indicated the courts will contain court lighting, however, may opt to install the court lighting at a later phase. Court lighting will be approximately 18 to 20 feet in height and will be required to be shielded so that no direct glare will affect adjacent residential land uses. A condition of approval has been added to the staff report that the tennis court lighting will be limited to no later than 10 p.m. at night and no hours in the early morning. The project also consists of adding an off-street parking facility, which is up to the north of the project there with 69 parking stalls. This parking lot is meant to serve not only the new tennis courts, but also as an overflow to the main parking lot on the high school campus for when larger events are taking place. The new parking lot will be connected via pedestrian path to the main high school parking lot, and all parking stalls are anticipated to be full-size parking spaces, which for the city of Ripon is 10 feet wide by 19 feet. The parking lot will contain landscaping and parking lot lighting. Although no lighting has been indicated on the plans, the applicant will be required to submit a detailed plan for lighting to the Ripon Police Department and Planning Department for final review and approval. All lighting is required to be appropriately shielded to direct all light towards the project site and keep glare away from adjacent land uses and rights of way. Site access. Access to the site will be provided by 2 new commercial driveways on North Wilma Avenue. The southernmost driveway will be an entrance only, while the northernmost driveway will be an exit only driveway. Both driveway approaches as well as the entrance driveway will have to be striped and signed appropriately. The entrance driveway will also be red curbed to prevent vehicles from parking on the driveway in the driveway access area. As a condition of approval for the project, center median on North Wilma Avenue will be extended south a little bit as approved by the city engineer for traffic safety purposes. There's no buildings on site are indicated on the plan, but there are a couple shade structures planned for the project. In the proposed courtyard area, which is pretty much directly behind center field of the baseball field there. The courtyard is anticipated to have tables and seating for viewing of both tennis courts and the JV soccer field. Landscaping for the site. Landscaping for the site will be focused around the driveway entrances, around the perimeter, and throughout the parking lot, in the courtyard area, and as a buffer between the tennis courts and the adjacent residential lots. As a condition of approval, the applicant will be required to retain a landscape architect to design the site, but more importantly, to work with the two adjacent residential landowners for appropriate landscape buffering for the new tennis courts. The applicant will be required to submit a more detailed landscaping plan, which will include irrigation for final review and approval to the city. As far as the trash enclosure, the proponent does not anticipate the need for a trash dumpster in this area at all, or in the parking lot. But there is a condition that if in the future they do decide to put a dumpster on site, they will have to build a full trash enclosure with a roof system on it somewhere over in the parking lot area to accommodate that. We did send a project referral out to all affected agencies and requiring comments to be sent in. And all the comments that were received have been incorporated into the staff report where appropriate. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you. That concludes the staff report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you so much. Do we have questions for Director Zeiderbach?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Ken, does Ripon Christian currently own all of this land that the proposed tennis courts are on? Okay.
Yep.
You mentioned that it's to include appropriate landscape buffer. When Ripon Christian expanded their preschool, they included a block wall that was allowed to be determined by the neighbors in that area. Is that part of this currently or not?
A block wall is not required up against public, semi-public districts or schools like that. So it's not a requirement in here, but they are required. They are working with the neighbors for fencing, so that's going to be part of the discussion that they would have with the neighbors on appropriate fencing and shielding.
And then the zoning of this current property allows for a school expansion like that?
Correct.
Ken, you mentioned the no activities after 10 p.m. You said no early morning activities. Have they set a time on that? I know that oftentimes sports programs can have practices before school, that type of thing.
Well, the intention of that was currently our city tennis courts, the lights shut off at 10 o'clock. So there's a timer on the lights. People, when they use them, they can turn the lights on, but at 10 o'clock, they don't operate anymore. They also are able to turn the ones on at the city courts by the community center early in the morning. So some months of the year when it's dark outside, they can activate those lights. So the condition that was put in there was that the lights would not operate in early morning hours at all. So they'd have to wait till daylight hours.
So that was more for lighting purposes,
Not lighting
so much
purposes.
noise.
Correct.
People out there in practically somebody's backyard.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so that has a concern been raised over that issue at all?
Not with my discussions, but I think there are some of the residents here that live right next to where the courts are proposed. So
Okay.
yeah, I think they wish to speak tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just a question about traffic. Obviously, with buses coming in and out of there for tournaments and whatnot, has there been a traffic study, or is there a concern about the increased amount of vehicular movement?
There hasn't been a traffic study for the site, but the site is designed to be able to allow buses in. Those are 25-foot wide commercial driveways that are going in. They will be a one-way only type of driveway as well, so they'll be plenty wide enough to accommodate busing. And it'll be an entrance and an exit. The median island at North Wilma will be extended so that when people are exiting the site, they will not be able to turn left to go down Wilma. They'll have to go through the roundabout to get turned back around if they're going to head the other direction.
Thank you.
Ken, do you know, are they using any of the existing land, like any of the turf area for these, or is it all gonna be able to fit on the, extra land that they have?
So they will be using some of the turf area. So the courts, pretty much the 4 courts, so the 2 that are directly behind the resident there, and then maybe the 2 that are right above it, that's all kind of grass or turf area now. Where the parking lot sits is pretty much that area is the Escas house that's currently there. Maybe a little to the northern end of that's some of the turf area, where the parking lot is the very extensive the parking lot on the north. The intent was to make sure they can still have a JV soccer field, turf area to fit over there in that area. So they did keep most of the turf, but they are using some of it.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Would the applicant like to address us? Okay. Please state your name and address, please, as you approach the microphone there.
Good evening. My name is Eric Cigar. I'm the superintendent at Ripon Christian Schools, 435 Maple Avenue here in town. Just wanted to say thank you to the commissioners for the opportunity to be here this evening and for consideration of our project. We would be happy to answer any and all questions. This project is something that's near and dear to many people within our community. Actually, when Maple was extended and the frontage road came back in, I believe nearly 20 years or so ago, that's the casualty of that on our campus was actually our 4 tennis courts. We have since then repurposed that area for our industrial arts program and ag program for those buildings. But we have enjoyed a wonderful relationship with the city of Ripon, and hope that we can continue to be a tremendous asset to this community. And hopefully this is part of that process going forward. So if you have any questions, please let us know.
Good. Does anybody have a question for Mr. Cigar? I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
We'll follow our normal process. Is there anyone that would like to speak on behalf of the program in favor of the project? Okay. Anyone that would like to speak opposed to the project? Please take the podium. That's fine.
Hi, my name is Terry Harden, and we live at 522 North Wilma, right in front of the proposed tennis courts.
Okay.
We just have a couple of questions. We've met with Eric and with Ken, and we felt like those meetings went really well, and they answered our questions. But a couple have just come up tonight. We didn't know about the center median being extended. Is that going to go past our house? Are we going to be able to make a left turn into our driveway if we're going south?
I don't know the answer to that, but we'll get it for you.
Okay, that could be very inconvenient.
Okay.
And where are the concessions and tables going to be? think
I
there
don't
was
know
a
about
mention of
concessions, but it
that.
looks like, can you show? You can't?
No.
Okay. It is, this is it up here, right, Ken?
Yeah, it's just some shade structures.
All the way up, and then you'll see this triangle shape.
Okay. Okay, closer to the baseball field.
Right-
Okay.
Right at center field, look straight out center field.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, I don't have a laser pointer. You got it, yes.
Okay, thank you. And also, 10 o'clock is pretty late at night. We get up at 5 in the morning. So I don't know if there's any possibility of changing that or not. But that's late for us.
Okay, we can discuss that as well.
And the other concern my husband had is we have a well. And I know we've talked about drainage and where the water's going to go. We don't think it's going to be on our side of the property. And we're hoping not, because we don't want to get any contamination in the groundwater in that area.
Right.
So I'd like you to keep that in mind if you would too, please.
Okay.
And
So
that's all.
center median and the well are,
Water drainage.
yeah, water draining
Yep.
towards that. Okay.
And the lights, 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I got the 10 p.m. here. Okay, great.
And that's all I've got.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please. State your name and address if you would, please.
Good evening. My name is Karen Sutton Warren, and my husband Ron Warren and I reside at 506 North Wilma Avenue. We have lived there. Oh, I believe the house was built in the 40s and was the first home on the street. We lived there since 1980 November. There have been many changes over the years, each resulting in changes to our property that have not always been welcome. The tennis courts appear to be somewhat one of these changes. As the proposition stands, we are opposed to the tennis courts. We see the plan as presented as not in our best interest. As owners of a home that was the first home on Wilma Avenue, built sometime in the 40s, and as a good neighbor, my husband and I feel Ripon Christian could take the courts away from our property lines and maintain some of the little privacy that we have left. Since the previous Walnut Orchard was developed into a sports field, we actually feel that the court should not even be adjacent to the property lines at all. It is invasive to our lives. The sports venues are very loud as it is, currently now. People congregating at the back area by our fence is unacceptable for us. The current plan has courts positioned directly against our properties, and I want to clarify that the 506 does not have a court against it. It is adjacent, but we're right next door to Terry at 522. We will be subject to people sitting, playing, and yelling directly adjacent to our yards. This is not a positive in our eyes. Ripon Christian has a large area of land that they want to develop into an asset for the school. What has been described to me as a 5-foot offset is not enough between the properties. I had positively envisioned, a landscaped area as a barrier that could be planted with shrubs and/or fencing to break the noise and visual contact coming into our yards. Then the courts. Our questions are, why is there not some landscape barrier or offset to the courts? Why so close to the property lines? What does the school gain by butting up against the very edge of the property lines? Why can't the tennis courts be moved away from our homes? We think Ripon Christian could do better by their neighbors by changing the plans and moving the courts away from our property lines. Do you think the development of this project will increase or decrease our property values? Can the project do both? Our concerns. Distance between the courts and property line. The 5-foot offset is not adequate. Too close to the property line. People congregating behind our fence. Loud venues disrupting our home. Public access to our property. And egress to the rear of the properties. And again, that is not my property, but it's Terry's. I'm still concerned. A barrier between properties to ensure privacy. A landscaped area as a barrier that could be planted with shrubs and/or fencing to break the noise and view of people looking into our yards. Privacy as above, noise as above. Ability of people to view our yards from the venue. The drainage of water. When the sports field was built, it was raised and caused flooding where runoff could previously go into and out of the previous walnut orchard. I am told the issues with the drainage will be addressed and we will be included in those conversations. Elevation of the courts. Will the courts be elevated to the height of the current field or lowered to the level of our homes? We prefer the courts be level, and that gives less of a view into our property. The security of the space when not in use. Will the area be somehow closed to secure the area during the time when the school-sponsored activities are not in session? Doing this would prevent public from wandering onto the property. And our concern is unsupervised strangers not affiliated with any activity or school sponsored program wandering around in the back of our homes. And there's no view. It's a private area. So people can go back there and nobody can see what's happening. So respectfully, that is what my husband and I are worried about. And I wouldn't call us, as I stated, totally opposed, but we would like to see some things happen that will bring both parties to a happy conclusion. We really like Ripon Christian. They've been a good neighbor, even though things have happened when the field was raised. It used to be a walnut orchard. Everybody probably knows that. I don't know. But when that field was raised, it caused the beginning of a trough of our yard. And when the road was raised, it made another. And we had a catastrophic flood all the way down through the White House, which was Melvin Brown's house at one time. And our septic are under our house. All of our heating and air ducts were demolished. So I'm really looking forward to something with the drainage and the running of water across the land being rectified on this. And then as far as what the discussion went, along with Terry, we're concerned about the median extension. I think it's a good idea. I think going down that median is a dangerous thing, but I do want to be able to pull out of my house and not have to go around the roundabout. The concessions and the seating, we were kind of worried about what kind of seating would be around the courts. And I think that could be provided to us later. And that goes along with, are the courts going to be like 2 or 3 feet above our house and then people sitting in a bleacher, or how, it's for tournaments and school
Sure.
activities. So how is that going to play out?
Right.
And then let's see. I can't read my own writing, but I guess the last thing is the drainage and our wells and our septic and how that will affect it. And I'm told by Ken, who was very kind and had very good discussions with my family, that we would talk about that and they would do coding and regulations and engineering and that kind of thing. So that's basically what my husband and I are concerned about. We're a family of 5. We've lived here since 1980, and Ripon Christian has always been a good neighbor, and we're hoping that we can come to some, because I think the tennis courts are an improvement in the view of the area. It's a plus, but can we both come out making sure that nobody's hurt in the process and we're both happy?
Very good. Thank
So,
you.
compromise.
Okay. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes. Okay.
Hello, my name is Donna Fox. My husband and I own 404 North Wilmot, right across the street. We're not opposed. We understand you guys want to expand the Ripon Christian School. However, we have great concerns regarding the traffic. We've already seen a negative impact on our street regarding the medical facility that was put in here. We have people parking in this parking lot over here that's a one-way. I've almost been hit head-on with people who miss the medical and go into the parking lot and then flip out into that middle. I understand there needs to be a traffic flow addressed because we're going to have big buses, what they say, 12 and 27-foot buses, somebody said, going in there. We're going to be having high schoolers going in there. And they're saying, well, they're going to be one way. I've run into people who go out the one way all the time. That's how I've almost been hit head on. We have great concerns about the traffic on Wilma. I really, I don't understand why they can't extend these 69 spaces up into the other parking lot and move their turf over. I, I just think it's a bad move to put it there. I think we're going to see more accidents. We're going to have more speeders. A lot of them going to be high schoolers. We're going to possibly see more pedestrians. I've seen young kids crossing over to come over here to the park and come close to being hit because we have no decent cross path over here, no lighting. I've seen even moms with strollers. Even though it isn't a law, you go to a corner, you should be able to cross. People don't stop. We have people cutting through our city, traffickers trying to bypass 99 southbound. Um, that's not being addressed. I have grave concerns about the traffic, and I don't understand why they can't move those spots over there by it's on the frontage road with the other, I think it's right in here. This is their current one, right? So where they can move it over in here somehow and move that rather than having it on Wilma. That's one of our biggest concerns. The other concern I have is trash. They're saying, oh, they're not gonna put anything in there for trash. I think he said something about no dumpster. Already I'm seeing a trash increase. When the little store down here, the little Hot Wheels store has their weekly, I guess it's like these
The outdoor
festivals they
sale that
have.
they do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do it a lot. And you can't find parking on my street. We have pretty well open parking. Trash when they leave, I got trash blowing up in my yard. I'm constantly picking up trash. I've actually contemplated putting up what my neighbor has, oleanders, to keep the trash out of my yard when these happen. So I don't really think the traffic has been thoroughly thought through. And that's one of our biggest concerns. As far as the tennis courts, I understand, not a problem. I really just want them to rethink where they're going to put those 69 spaces. And I think that's potentially somewhere on the frontage where they can actually set up something more like a traffic stop, traffic lights, something for these high schoolers and their parents and the activities. Because I have grandchildren and the football game's over. It might be over at 10. But these kids have a driver's license. They're not out of there at 10. You know what I'm saying? They're hanging around outside, they're hanging out in the court, and they might not be into up to no good, but it's when you have people that have to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning and these kids are out at, 11, 12 o'clock and getting loud and get louder and louder, it gets old real quick. So those are the biggest concerns that I can express, and I really, that's what I want to stress is please look at the traffic. I've had too many problems already in the short time that medical has been here and the Hot Wheels has been put in. And while we're at it, can you do something about the one-way traffic, that one-way driveway in that little shopping? There's got to be another way out of there. That's all I got.
That's right. There is only one in and out. Okay. Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to speak? Please take the podium if you would.
I live at 402 North Wilma. I've been there for 44 years. I've seen it all. And if you've live in town as much as I have, you guys live here for a little while now? You guys on the board here, how long have you lived in town
We
here?
do. We have lots of longevity here.
There you go. So you know what this street is out here. Well, what it is right now that you don't realize, this is the high-speed road for the city equipment, the fire truck and stuff. They plan on coming down here at 60 miles an hour. That's what they do. That's why they never put a crosswalk in here. You guys are jamming up the end of it with parking lots and buses and stuff. Since Kent's put his office over there, what's happened, he don't have enough parking, so everybody's parking on our side of the street that can't fit in his parking lot, and that's right in front of where you're gonna have your driveway out there. So when you guys go doing all this, with all this in mind, our road should have had a crosswalk on it that you could light the lights up for the kids a long time ago, but they won't do it because this is their emergency speed road and nobody's gonna slow that fire truck down. That's their way of thinking. So we don't have the facilities on the street that we should have already. And when you guys do this, it's gonna be a big mess. What's gonna eventually happen is, right now, we have parking on that side of the street. we can park in front of our houses. Somebody can leave a car there. But when you guys get going with this plan, they're gonna take that away from us. We won't have that anymore because this street is gonna be so congested. The people that are parking out of the Kent's parking lot on this side of the street now, they won't be able to park there because that'll be no parking. So that's gonna make everything more congested for everybody. And I live right where they're gonna have the tennis courts behind my house. Why couldn't they put one tennis court away from my yard instead of having two of them back right up to my yard? I'm out there and the lights on that thing at night are gonna be coming in my backyard. So it's gonna be like daylight in my backyard if you have the courts right next to my whole thing. You know, you guys are just, we used to be a nice little thing we had going there. We're out in the country with this stuff. Now we're in the middle of the city with lights on all night in the tennis court with probably no place to park and real congested roads. You can't get across this road because there's no crosswalk that should have been there years ago. All these things could be taken into consideration before you guys do this. Another thing you don't know about, PG&E assessed us for the overhead lines on this street. They got the money from us over 20 years ago to put those lines underneath the ground. We never heard no more about it. They've been paid over 20 years ago to take all the power poles. There's not that many of them on this side of the street. Now, what we ended up with was another pole in front of my place the other day because the lines are sagging down and my new neighbor couldn't get his fifth wheel in there.
Unfortunately, we do not control PG&E.
So this street's under a lot
We
of
would make some
stress.
changes if we could, but we do not.
Well, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
This street's, it's just, it needs some help. It needs a lot of help more than just putting stuff down there. You need to get some crosswalks on this thing and put some signs up to slow the people down. There's a lot of people around here now. And they're trying to park from Kent's over there and you're gonna take that away, I'm sure, when this gets going. And then they're gonna, what are they gonna do? You know, it's gonna be a mess. We're getting too congested around here. And I don't like that thing of having two tennis courts. You could put one and push it back in a little ways. You don't have to have two of them right up to the yard there. Because the lights back there now when they're having the football games, sometimes they leave them on and they forget they're on. I'm flooded in the house all night with light. You gotta shut all the, you know, blinds up on the house and stuff sometimes. I mean, it's been inconvenient, but I'm not a solid thing that's there completely with lights on it all day. You know, that's the way it's gonna be from now on. They'll have the lights on at night for the tennis players. So when's the lights gonna go out at night over there?
Well, I think what they've said is that the maximum they could go to is 10 p.m. and they will be shielded so that they don't shine directly into your yard or into any of the yards there. That's the, and speaking as a guy who does construction, we've had to do that same kind of thing. Mr. Collins mentioned the Ripon Christian project over on Main Street. It sits right at the backyard of some residences along there.
Yeah.
My company built that, and we did have to put special shielding on those overhead lamps so that they would not shine into the yards. And to my knowledge, we don't get complaints at all over there. So there are things that can be done to mitigate that. But go ahead, if there's anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I would just like you to consider putting one of those courts behind my back of my house instead of right up to the, you know, two of them side by side. Why don't you just have one of them, leave a little room on each side so the lights, you know, even if you shield them, won't be that much closer and stuff.
Okay.
You know, just because we live there.
Thank you.
You bet.
Appreciate that. Would anyone else like to speak? Please.
My name's Mike Fox. I live over at 404 North Wilma. My concern is about the traffic, the congestion, especially right there at the traffic circle. Looking at this the first time I've had a chance to see it. I've already seen enough things in and around that traffic circle with that ingress and egress there. I see a lot of problems happening very quickly, and I just hope you address the issue of transportation around that area.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, as is typical, we do give the applicant a chance to speak, answer anything that you would like to. Mr. Cigar, would you like to take the podium? Thank you.
I'll try and be brief here. I know a lot of the focus this afternoon has been on traffic in the area. That's obviously a concern for us as well. Wilma is getting more and more congested. I'd like to say that from our standpoint right now, The parking lot is, we don't anticipate that being open during the day for student access on a daily basis. So it's really going to be limited to the special events that we have on campus, or if we're hosting an afternoon activity. Again, for the most part, those activities are, I would say there's probably 15 to 20 tennis-specific events during the course of the year, what we would anticipate during the course of that spring. In addition, you're going to run into the Friday night football games. I think that's been mentioned before, where we would open up that for overflow parking. Some of the other events that we have on campus, the occasional concert, Grandparents' Day, those type of venues or activities. But that's not going to be a primary, really, parking lot for us. And so we don't really anticipate a lot of Ripon Christian traffic, hopefully generated on that road. Again, I would echo the concern of the extension of that median. I don't want to obviously restrict access to the neighbors going down. Again, briefly on the other parts right there, the reason for the 6 courts in that location specifically is that it does kind of build into our current infrastructure. Ideally, we'd like to pull that off the property line if we could a little more, but that does allow just right now about 8 feet between the back baseball fence and the tennis fence that allows us to get equipment back and forth. Otherwise, you're talking about having to go all the way around the outside, all the way out to Maple and back and forth if you want to get equipment through there. So again, we're willing to work with the neighbors, whatever we can do to help mitigate some of those. Like you said, I think the lighting issue is one that is obviously a concern, but I think there's been vast improvements in the way to offset some of those lighting issues. And again, we're very open to what landscaping in the back area there that we can help to maintain. It's a fine line. I know some want to be able to, we don't want to restrict your view out the back as well. I think that's kind of an asset of that area, but we also want to maintain your privacy. So we'll work with you what we can do. So.
Anybody have anything they,
I have
would you
Okay.
stay up, Eric, for just a minute?
I think we have
Sorry.
some questions.
Apologize. Go ahead, Dave.
No, ladies
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry. I didn't.
I have a question in regard to the height of the tennis courts. That was one of the concerns that I think, was it Terry or, well, anyway, one of them talked about when, are the courts going to be elevated, or are they going to be lowered, or what's the deal with that?
Maybe if I could invite Adam Merrill, he's kind of the site engineer, drew these conceptual plans for us. Just as a little bit of background, there is a differentiation between the existing turf right now and the neighbors. So I think that's what you're talking about. Right as you get fairly close to the property line, it slopes down. So there is a differentiation, but I'll let Adam maybe talk to that.
Please introduce yourself, Mr. Merrill.
Adam Merrill with Siegfried Engineering. I'm the civil engineer. I'm also a Ripon resident, and my kids actually go to Ripon Christian.
Okay.
So your question about the elevation, we don't have a survey, but the intent is to not. I don't intend to elevate that, even if we have to export dirt, because I know that's a big concern. But we would try to make that as level as we can. In regard to the storm drain, that was a question too. We are required to keep all the stormwater on site, and the best spots to put that are more north and between the baseball field and the courtyard area. So the intent is to move the storm drain. We don't want to put it near the property of a neighbor. We always want to push it away and onto our site. So that would be the intent. I heard that question as well. So.
Yeah, and with hardscape, you have the opportunity to direct the water. So
correct, and that would be the intent. I also want to address, there was a security question. This would remain secure, so they could close it off and the fencing and gates would be secure when not in use. So that would be the intent as well.
You're talking about the parking lot?
The parking lot and the tennis court, so it would be secure. And there's a gate in front. It's hard to see, but there's a gate on that entrance right
here. Okay.
So the courts and the parking lot are not, does not have public access. It is for Ripon Christian only. Okay.
Exactly. If somebody were to mistakenly pull in, they could just exit right out. They could just pull in and they it's closed, and then they just exit right onto Wilma. Okay.
So question for you, Adam, and maybe Mr. Cigar, related to the existing parking that's on campus now. Is there a way to connect with a walkway to allow for additional parking, safe parking? One of the neighbors brought that up, to be able to use that area as a walkway to get to the tennis courts?
Yes, so that there is a walkway there. It's hard to see in the exhibit just because it's there's an aerial behind it, but there's a walkway that connects it to. I'll show you right now.
Got it. Okay.
I think that's what you're trying to do.
Right here.
Perfect.
There's a walkway that ties the two together for events and just having access.
Thank you.
I'm not a traffic engineer, obviously, but there was some concern about buses. Um, I don't find the buses zooming around too much and causing problems, but is there any issue if you had events with the buses dropping off in your main parking lot and the players walking across?
No, in fact, we would probably discourage buses from coming in. If you see, there's actually not bus parking designated in that area.
See that?
So from our perspective, we'd have our buses that would be coming. And honestly, with most tennis teams that are relatively small, they're generally traveling in alternate transportation vans or something along those lines. But if we did have a bus situation, we'd have them park in the main parking lot
Okay,
and then be able to walk across.
okay,
So,
great.
yeah.
Thank
There-
you.
I have a
Oh,
couple
go ahead, sorry,
questions.
Dave.
Tennis balls get airborne. How high is the perimeter fence on this facility and what does it look like?
I believe 12 feet is the slated fence height, and it's the black PVC wrapped
Cyclone
vinyl
fence.
coating, vinyl coating fencing.
The
we're talking
slats, will have slats or no?
about. I don't think it's slated for that right now. It kind of depends on, again, with the neighbors. We talked about using some landscaping to kind of create some of that barrier, depending on what it would be undesirable. You'll notice that I think the neighbors mentioned this. Technically, the end of the tennis courts stop at the property line next to the Hardens, or at the Hardens property line.
Right.
So, again, we've been talking with them and about whether or not they want to be able to see through, or we've talked about possibly putting up windscreen type material, if that would be more desirable to maybe block some of that privacy. But it also has the other effect of blocking their view as well. So.
Couple other questions. So I see that the soccer field and football field is busy frequently. So I'm assuming it's rented to outside organizations or other, so it gives more people an opportunity to use the field.
We don't actually rent those fields out. Generally, they're used by the public as a first come first serve type situation. We don't lock those gates all the time. Again, so families and rec teams and the like will come on and use the open spaces. So our varsity baseball field and our varsity softball field are the two that are locked.
Okay. Would this be rented out for outside of Ripon Christian tournaments?
That is not something that we anticipate. Now, I'm not able to say we would never consider that. There are the opportunities obviously for the league tournaments and those types of things within the school use itself, but we don't necessarily have a desire to become a U.S. Tennis Association type
Bring
deal.
it to Ripon.
Yes, yeah. I know that there's another project that's kind of in the works that's looking to make kind of that type of a facility. We would anticipate really primarily school use, whether it be our PE departments or athletic department.
Okay. So let me be candid if that's all right. Okay. So there's a couple of issues that I see currently. Tennis can be a noisy game. The impact of the tennis ball on a racket, okay, is noisy. And balls get higher than 12 feet in the air, okay? Any tennis court, you'll find balls outside of that area. So we can anticipate some of them are going to be in the neighbor's, property. So just the amount of noise, the impact over and over. There's no sound wall in this project currently, and we're talking about a fence. It worries me that if it's used to its capacity, because you guys are very generous, and I love what Ripon Christian does, but it seems like it may be a little tough on the neighbors right there, the two most adjacent neighbors.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question about pickleball, as we know it's becoming more and more popular.
Yeah.
These are going to be brand new courts in great shape as opposed to the current community center. Do you anticipate using it for pickleball?
I would anticipate our own pickleball use. That's a unit in our PE department for both our boys and girls PE programs. So I would anticipate that. Yeah, there is no high school pickleball as far as CIF competitive that we participate in. But yeah.
One last question. So usage, help me understand the usage. Primarily high school or primarily Ripon Christian people, but also open to the public, or?
I would see very little public. Again, so there's in today's climate, obviously school security tends to be a very big topic. And so for us, having courts on campus Obviously, it creates a safer environment for our students. Right now, we use the city court, so transportation, just the location of that is not ideal for us. So bringing that on campus is a security thing for us, but it also allows us, honestly, to help secure that back area. That we would view that area as a little bit of a weakness into our campus, being able to get from the main parking lot that you see just north of the PAC and the gymnasium. You can actually currently get around there. So there's not really fencing on this backside. So allowing this project will help kind of solidify that. So yeah, that's part of the reason why we're talking about this. So we're going to limit access to that whole area.
And then talk to me a little about how the access will be limited. Would it be gated
Yes.
on the entrances?
So our plan is in this area right here creates a pinch point, and so that would be one area. Then obviously you're talking about fencing in these areas that people would not be able to get through. Likely have, obviously this is a car gate. We're talking about having fencing along this area, well, chain link to prevent access from that parking lot unless we want it to be specifically.
Gotcha. So the car gate would be right here, restricting anybody from coming into the parking.
And using the parking lot, yeah. And then also then a bigger fence that goes along the parking lot edge where that up against the JV soccer field area.
One of the things that came up earlier, I believe it was when Ms. Harden was speaking, was about the hours. And I know that we have hours at the public facility. Do you need to go to 10 p.m.? Do you need to match that, or could we do something earlier?
Yeah, I would anticipate us very, very seldom needing to be 10. I'd hate to be handcuffed, but at the same time, I understand I want to be a reasonable neighbor. I guess maybe my one, if there's an ability to compromise there, if we would be in contact with the neighbor and say, hey, there's a possibility for an event that may run past, the 9 o'clock time frame or something along those lines, that we'd be able to communicate and let them know about that. Like I said, for our purposes, nobody's holding practice at 9:30 at night. Part of the reason for 6 courts is it allows us to get those matches done more quickly. For us, the lights, again, we've talked about, we're plumbing the infrastructure. Not sure if we're going to pull the trigger. That'd probably be a little bit of a budgetary item more so than anything else. But that would allow us as well to, get those games in, especially when you start getting in the early spring, late fall, when things maybe are, the darkness sets in a little earlier.
What would you anticipate for start time in the morning?
For our purposes, we wouldn't have, again, because it's a dedicated facility, we wouldn't probably have practice in the mornings. So I would say 8:30, with the start of school. Yeah. So
You said 8:30?
I would say 8:15, 8:30.
Okay.
And most of the tennis matches are done by 6:30.
Yeah.
Generally,
Yeah.
right? Except for tournaments or bigger
Very
events,
rare
we like to
occasion.
have that facility, but it's not the community center, right? This is Ripon Christian's tennis courts. It's not available for everybody to use until 10 o'clock at night.
Exactly.
Okay.
We would anticipate at some point in time, maybe there would be constituencies that would want to come in, but we have no problem restricting their access. We don't want to be monitoring stuff at 10 o'clock at night either. So
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are really trying to be good neighbors, so I appreciate that.
Eric, seating was brought up. I
Mhm.
don't anticipate you would need bleachers or anything like that. Do you thought through, would the seating be elevated or?
So what that's a great question. I've actually had that question from our own constituents. I think right now there's obviously gonna be some player benches, just the basic single bench located throughout the inside for players to put their water in their towel and all that good stuff. Kind of right now, like at the community center, a lot of viewing is done on the outside of the fence. We've talked about maybe putting in maybe small 2 or 3 rows of bleachers type deal, something movable, aluminum that you could maybe repurpose during the off season somewhere else on campus. But be really inside the facility, there's really not a lot of room, I don't believe, for you to really put a lot of outside things.
2 to 3 rows of bleachers, so they would step up 4 feet, 5 feet?
Probably not even that. Probably
2 feet?
yeah, probably about 3.5 feet. I think is what they've seen the rise on, about 3-foot bleachers.
So if this were approved, then you would start construction when and what would be the duration of it?
Yeah, so we're currently in the fundraising portion of our project. The board has greenlit the project for once we hit a certain threshold, which we would hope we'd be able to get to by this fall. to be able to possibly even start next spring. Obviously, we've got a number of steps to move through once this is done, as far as the plant, or excuse me, the building department and the like, and permitting. But yeah, that's our ideal time frame, would be to be breaking ground sometime in the fall.
Just, I'm just going through some of the neighbors' concerns that came up, and one of those was as regards to trash. I realize you guys already have trash enclosures around the property, so it would just be a matter of maintenance around the fencing in the area.
So we plan on having trash cans, but instead of a 12 cubic yard or whatever, that 6 yard bin where they'd all locate, we just use our staff would go through and change trash can bags, as opposed to having a separate standalone bin.
Okay. Let me just look at this. You guys see anything else that you'd like to ask?
Last question. I know you've spoken at length with the neighbors that are most impacted, and there's a 5-foot landscaping buffer, I believe. Any discussion of what would go in there? Would it be taller or anything like that? Did you come to any resolution on that?
Yeah, we've really just started the conversation in terms of what would you like from us, and what we can find them some middle ground. We've talked a little bit about some Italian cypress, but those, people have different feelings on those, but they're tall and probably would be somewhat of a sound barrier. What kind of fencing? Again, we want to be conscious of I think the advantage of living where you're at is the view out the back, right? I think that's kind of an asset, to be able to see the green grass and not have a concrete wall. I think that's with our preschool project, that was the balancing act that those neighbors wanted as well. So we're really open to whatever landscaping that they're interested in, to kind of hopefully meet that need. So.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we'll close the public portion here then, and have some discussion amongst ourselves. Any questions for Director Zeidevard? I know the traffic issues are something we probably want to have some back and forth with, that is out of Ripon Christian's control. So anybody, I'll let you guys start with any questions that you have. Please.
I was going to ask, is there any plans to review or do a traffic study? Like, how's the traffic going to be increased? Are there any plans to maybe adjust the speed limit along North Wilma? Since the school is now kind of bordered up to North Wilma, is that going to be a school zone? Is it going to be required like crosswalks, as it was asked earlier?
So when we do our project referrals, we send them out to all the departments and also other agencies to comment on. So the engineering department's what looks at traffic here, and also the police department. They didn't have any concerns as far as the traffic, as far as the number of traffic coming in and out of there. The only concern they had was that it's the median. If you look, the exit driveway for the project, the median stops about right there. So someone could come out that exit driveway and try to turn left and skirt kind of around the end of that median. So they wanted to extend that somewhat. That's to be determined by the city engineer about how far, but I think the intent was to bring it not further than, you can see on the drawing up there where the asphalt changes color, where the doctor's office is. When they had to do a slurry seal on the road, so it wouldn't be any further than that. That would be probably the furthest point it would go. Might not even have to go that far just to prevent the traffic from doing that. It was really to monitor the traffic coming out of that parking lot and not affect any of the housing on Wilma. As far as traffic concerns, the parking lot was like Mr. Cigar explained. It's not going to be an open parking lot. During school hours, typically it'd be open only when they have like their tennis events or a football event or some other large event that happens. They do have obviously some parking issues during, like say Grandparents' Day, when there's a lot of people that show up. So that would serve as an overflow for that. And then they could lock it off, much like the back parking lot is by the stadium. There's a back parking lot there that's got 20 or 30 spaces in it, I think. And that's not generally open at all during the day. It's just for when they have events. So there really was no traffic concerns as far as that were brought up that would warrant us having to do a traffic study at this point.
question of one of the people who spoke earlier.
Sure.
Terry, I see that in part of the condition is that they're gonna put in an attractive wrought iron fence. And it seems like you were agreeable to that fencing, not wanting something more substantial.
Actually, the wrought iron fence that you're referring to is from the tennis courts to their property line. So it's a security area. So Hunter, if you could flip through maybe some of the pictures, it shows a little bit better the renderings. Keep going through them. I don't know if there's a better picture of that front area, but so right there, where that driveway comes in, the edge of the court is about 32 feet from their northern property line. So the edge of the court would have a wrought iron fencing that goes from the edge of the court to their northern side fence. That
We're
would
looking into
be
a
fully
backyard
landscaped.
there, right?
That's on the school's property. There's a condition of approval in the staff report that they work with the two neighboring properties there to determine what type of fence they would like.
Oh, okay, it's in there.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Never mind my question.
So I have a question about the roundabout. I'm not even sure if it's material or not, but just a question because we've done stop signs before in roundabouts that have heavy traffic and fast vehicles moving through. Is there a chance that in that traffic study that we could slow down traffic even more by having a stop sign put in?
Yeah, the only roundabout we have, Matt, is the one on North Ripon and River Road, because that was an interim roundabout that had issues with a lot of speed coming off of River Road, and it wasn't designed to its full. It's an interim roundabout until we got property on the other side of the road, so it wasn't designed large enough at this point. So they put that on there because of accidents that were occurring, and that was a recommendation by the police chief at that time. We haven't seen a lot of accidents at this roundabout. Obviously, I don't know if you remember when it first was put in, it was a 2-lane roundabout, which was quite a mess. It was restriped to a single-lane roundabout, and it functions very well. There is a crosswalk at that roundabout, a striped crosswalk, and then there is one down at Main Street. I know that's quite a large distance, but from a public safety standpoint, it's not the safest thing to have a crosswalk in the middle of the street where there's not a stop sign. There's ways to mitigate that a little bit with lit crosswalks with signage that lights up and stuff, but it's still a little bit of an unsafe movement. So that's why you don't see a crosswalk here. There used to be one a little bit further down by the police department that went into the Ace Hardware parking lot, but that was removed for safety reasons.
Other questions?
Yeah, so are we pretty confident that we've solved any drainage issues so that the neighbors are not going to have problems with their wells or their septic?
So this will be stuff that it happens during the design process. Obviously, Siegfried's going to be doing the design on it. They might even have to lower a little bit of that elevation, bring the courts down, but all that water, they have to maintain all their water on their site. So none of the water from Ripon Christian's property can drain onto their sites. All their water would be conveyed away from properties and probably to either a basin or an underground basin. I don't know if they determined what they're putting in. I don't know if you remember the doctor's office that went in down here. They actually have underground storage, which has become quite popular now with most sites as they're having to maintain more and more their stormwater on site. So if that's the case, it'd probably more likely put that out towards the soccer field area, under some turf or even under the parking lot area. And so they would be conveying most of the water via storm drain lines that would capture it and conveying it to that area so it's away from their properties.
Anyone else? So I guess just kind of summarizing, going quickly back through some of the issues, we know where the center median is going to be roughly. It's not going to block any traffic flow. We don't anticipate late events. It sounds like from the school's perspective that 10 o'clock would be kind of an unusual thing if somebody's still there at 10 p.m. The runoff issue and making sure that stormwater is taken care of on site we're good there. We've had to do that same thing, and I can speak personally in many projects. The preschool was one of those. Same situation where you handle it all on site. Elevation, I don't think that's necessarily an issue at this point. based on that. And then traffic seems to be, and trash, I should say, is going to be maintained with trash cans, carrying them off to the trash enclosures. Um, Traffic seems to still be kind of an issue, but that seems like it is from listening to the folks that have spoken tonight. They think it's an issue now without, whatever addition. I don't see this as bringing a ton of new traffic into the area personally, just speaking for myself. 15 to 20 events is not a ton of events that I think it's going to be used for. Certainly they can handle buses from the other side. So I think we've addressed a lot of the issues that were brought up, with the exception maybe of the privacy issue, and how best to screen it. And it sounds like the parties can get together on some of that. Where do you think we are with that?
So there is a couple conditions that are built into the staff report. One is the fencing of the properties directly adjacent to the courts. So they're supposed to be working with the neighbors on what type of fencing they would like to see. Fencing is always measured by from the taller property. So if a site, we have properties in town that are different elevations between two neighboring properties, and it's always measured from the higher site. So fencing can be up to 7 feet tall, and in commercial and in other areas too, it can be up to even 8 feet tall. So they can get some privacy there with some fencing just from the elevations, but they are required to work with the neighbors on what type of fencing they might like to see. So I think some might want to still have some views out the back, so they might not want a full solid 7-foot fence blocking, and others might want that. So that's why there's a requirement in there. They need to work with the neighbors on deciphering which type of fencing. And there also is a condition in here for a landscape architect to be hired and to work with the two property owners adjacent for appropriate screening. So that would all be incorporated into a landscape plan. So that's meant to address some of those issues.
Okay. That bring up any other questions for anybody?
Quick statement.
Please.
So I've spoken with all the people that were impacted by the preschool expansion, and all of them felt that Ripon Christian did an excellent job of looking after their privacy and what they wanted to see from their property. So the track record of Ripon Christian is they really do take these landowners consideration. And with the fencing, earlier on my question, I didn't pick what you said up, but they have options. So, and RC has got a great track record.
Very good. So Ken, at this point, I see that there is, if we agree with the staff's recommendation, that there's a motion to be made. And just want to make sure there's nothing else that we need to take into consideration at this point.
I think there's some of the things that you obviously heard tonight are built into the conditions of approval. We tried to mitigate some of those by reaching out to at least the direct adjacent neighbors there for sure on those to see. So those have been baked into the conditions of the approval. The schools viewed those. I think they're in acceptance of all those conditions. As far as the lighting, that's up to the commission if they want to dial those hours back or not. I think Mr. Cigar actually had a good point there, just maybe working with them if they did anticipate something going a little bit later, but that'd be up to the commission.
Any comments on that?
So at this point, you are not installing lights, correct? Right now? Is that correct, Ken?
Please answer.
Yeah.
If you would.
We're not sure.
Okay.
Now we're definitely planning to add lights at some point in time. Probably a budgetary item, whether or not that's done when the project is done or if it's added at some point in time.
So,
To
okay.
answer that question,
Right. No, that's okay. So we could make one of the conditions that the lights not be on past 9 o'clock, something like that. I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel about that. but
Yeah,
I'm just throwing it out
I
there.
agree. I agree. I think that's a part of the good neighbor policy that you guys do so well at, is that if you're not doing lighting now, but you will in the future, that there's an understanding with the neighbors that what's a apt time to not have them on. And I think you can work together in figuring that out, I would imagine.
Almost kind of putting the 9, 10 o'clock thing backwards instead of going to them and saying, hey, we're going to have this event, perhaps asking permission or getting agreement ahead of time. So instead of making it 10, make it 9 and then saying, if we're going to need to do something that's a little bit later, let's talk to the neighbors. Is that kind of
Yeah.
the thought process? I think if that's the case, we would just stipulate 9 o'clock then as a condition. Okay, anything else? Any other conditions that you guys think are important? I mean, obviously, really appreciate all the great input tonight. As good an input as I think we ever get. This is really good, so that we can help and offer some guidance. But I think we're probably at a point where one of you could make a motion if you'd like.
Yeah, I will make a motion that we approve the major site plan permit SR 24-16 for Ripon Christian Schools Tennis Complex based on the findings and subject to the conditions of the staff report. And we'd also like to add the condition that the lights will be turned off at 9 p.m. rather than 10. Need a second.
I'll second.
Very good. We're adopted 5-0 here. And so thank you everyone for your input. Thank you, Ripon Christian, for being a good neighbor, and we anticipate that you will continue to be so. And I believe, Ken, that was it for any discussion items. Do we have a report?
Yes, really quickly. So next month we have scheduled the tennis complex out at the Midland Sports Park. There's another project that's kind of fundraising to try to put some tennis courts out at the sports park. That won't be done in phases. That would probably start off with about 6 courts, and I think they ultimately want 10 to 12 courts out there and associated parking. So that'll be in front of the commission next month, and we're not certain yet, but the battery project extension request could possibly be on next month's agenda as well. We're still awaiting some additional items from the applicant so we can finish up the due diligence on that.
Very good.
All we have.
Any commissioners' reports or questions for Ken before we adjourn? No? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.